I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on Walz's part.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe, yeah.
He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when JD Vance said one of the many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed. He needed more reps.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, JD Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
All right, folks. So in my personal recap video, I made a pretty strong assertion that I thought JD Vance handily won the VP debate against Tim Walz. Now, in total fairness, you may say that I am pretty biased, and that is completely reasonable. So I was curious to find out what CNN had to say about this. And when I tuned in, I saw a panel, I kid you not, of Abby Phillips, Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, and all the usual suspects totally in agreement with me. All essentially saying that either JD Vance won the VP debate tonight, or in other words, Walz failed to deliver on many of the key points, which in other words means he lost the debate. So we're going to react to all of this here today. But first, folks, let me just quickly say that if you are enjoying the content, do us a big favor and hit that subscribe button down below, so that way we can keep bringing you videos like this. Trust me, your subscription goes a long way. It only takes a second. So do us a big favor, hit that red button right down below your screen. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's just get right into this. Here was CNN's reaction to the vice presidential debate. That might slightly surprise you, but at the same time, it really shouldn't, because it's just the objective truth. We all saw what we saw tonight.
I think we shouldn't lose track, I think even in the civility, of the fact that JD Vance came to this debate to land a bunch of punches, and he did. He landed a lot of punches in between all the niceties and all of that. And the thing that really stood out to me was that Tim Walz did not seem prepared for it. He didn't respond to a lot of the criticisms and attacks that Vance put on the table. He allowed some clear falsehoods to just go completely unanswered. He allowed JD Vance essentially to dodge on a whole host of issues, on climate change, on the issue of his flip-flopping on Donald Trump. He allowed Vance initially to claim that Trump salvaged the Affordable Care Act. It took him several sentences to get to the part of his answer, Walz's answer,
Abby, listen,
where he actually responded to that. I mean, I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on Walz's part.
There was a clear lack of preparation and execution. Abby Phillips is saying it as plainly as she will ever say. Tim Walz got bodied tonight in the VP debate against JD Vance. And you know, if that's how Abby Phillips, which is one of the most Trump deranged characters on that whole network, is speaking, it can't be that far from the truth. Okay, but that said, you think she's a standalone voice here? Take a listen to Dana Bash's take on it.
I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on Walz's part.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe, yeah.
He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when JD Vance said one of the many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed. He needed more reps.
See, that little jab by Dana Bash, I think, is proof of something I've been saying for a long time, which is secretly the national media, although they obviously support Kamala Harris, is a little bit scorned about the fact that neither her or Tim Walz will really take interviews, because there she is openly saying, well, maybe if he did more interviews, he would be ready for this. I don't know if that's necessarily true. It may actually be a valid point, but at the same time, what's the real reason they're so pissed is because Tim Walz won't go on CNN, right? And maybe that's part of the source of some of the slightly objective coverage you're seeing from them, is they're not happy with the Kamala campaign and their press availability, which is not doing any favors for CNN's ratings. But anyways, we got a lot more to get to in this video. Jake Tapper's about to speak, as well as CNN's little analyst guy. But before we continue this video, a quick word from our VP debate content sponsors over at Ground News. You regularly hear me complain about how today's media fails to represent the majority of Americans' opinions, especially us conservatives. They tend to push liberal narratives while sidelining others, creating a massive disconnect with so many Americans. And that's why I've partnered with Ground News to show you an easy way to get past all the bias and approach the current news with a more balanced perspective. Ground News is an app and website that gathers news from both left and right-wing sources on the same topic, so you can form your opinion based on every perspective, and that's so important. They even take it a step further with their blind spot feed that exposes much of the selective reporting of the left, and it surfaces important stories barely getting attention, like this one on how Whoopi Goldberg, host of The View, recently compared Trump to an insect, and Biden responded by pretending to kill a bug on the table. And many of you may have seen this clip. You might be surprised or not so surprised that only 11% of the sources that reported on this topic came from the left wing. And in the wake of not one but two assassination attempts on Trump, that kind of cover-up by the mainstream media is not just irresponsible, it is outright dangerous. And that's exactly why Ground News is such an important resource. With it being an election year, I really think news like this can change the outcome of elections and even the trajectory of this country, but only if you're aware of them in the first place, and I trust Ground News to help with that. So, to stay informed on the news that is so easily ignored by the mainstream media, visit ground.news/VinceDao or scan my QR code on the screen. My viewers save 40% on the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access to all of their features. So again, ground.news/VinceDao or check out the QR code on my screen. Again, ground.news/VinceDao to filter through all of the media bias, and on a night like this, it's probably pretty important. Okay, with that said, let's get to Jake Tapper and all the other panelists.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, JD Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting. You talked about the many times that Walz let Vance get away with saying things that weren't true. And you talked about the Obamacare one as if Donald Trump actually had tried to save Obamacare.
And just to be clear, he eventually did address that part of it. Did. But it was after, it took a little winding up. And I think that an experienced debater immediately jumps on something like that, because that's a really critical point for a Democrat to make.
So one of the things that I want,
you know, although I will say, I think in some ways that is a very pathetic excuse, because yes, you could say JD Vance is very good at this, and he obviously is, but let's keep in mind, JD Vance has not been in politics for that long. He's only been a United States Senator since actually the start of 2023. Like, he's very fresh to politics. Meanwhile, Tim Walz has been the governor of Minnesota for the past several years. I believe before that he was a congressman. He's been doing this thing for a long time. So blaming his lack of experience for what you saw tonight really is not valid to me. It simply comes down to the fact that Vance is just better, sharper, and has better arguments than Tim Walz. That's the truth. But anyways, I do understand what they're saying, making excuses. The point here is still the same. Walz did not do very well, and that's what really matters.
Walz did not go after him on that.
That's part of the point, is that you're actually explaining exactly what I think was missing on the debate stage. JD Vance has a record on abortion. And you didn't really hear about that from Tim Walz. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but you just didn't hear it. And secondly, JD Vance's job tonight was to launder Trumpism for middle America, for those undecided voters. And I think that in large part, he was able to do that without getting a whole lot of pushback from Tim Walz on the stage. And maybe they're talking to different segments of that undecided pool, but
I don't think so.
Vance was able to just do what he came to do, which is to take Trumpism and just package it up in a different way.
When I said rehab, I don't necessarily think at the end of the day, though, that what we saw is going to make a big difference at the top of the ticket.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you listen to Jay,
she's so mad. Okay, they're all so mad. Right? She's seething through her teeth. I don't really think he delivered. He didn't do enough. Dana Bash, what's the cope on her part? Well, it's just not going to make a difference. Don't really worry about it. Dana is probably right about that. Okay, I'm not denying that the VP debate doesn't really matter, because that's the truth. It doesn't. But still, they're seething about this. They're really not happy. You can tell, especially Abby Phillips. She's like, Oh my gosh. Why? Why? Come on, Walz. Why didn't you do better tonight? Well, because he's an idiot. He's a buffoon. He always has been. Okay, now let's tune in. This is the polling analyst guy going to explain his take on it. And once again, he is confirming Tim Walz lost the debate. All
the
right.
record.
There
was not a peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it. John King, what were your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are based on incoming from Democrats and Republicans throughout the debate, and they saw this as a debate in two parts. Essentially, the first 40 minutes where a lot of Democrats were getting a little nervous and Republicans were quite elated, thinking that J.D. Vance was prosecuting the case they want to prosecute, going after the Biden-Harris record on the economy, going after the Biden-Harris record on the border, repeatedly talking about inflation was lower, prices were lower, things were better in your life when Donald Trump was president, things are worse now. The same group, even the Republicans conceded, and Democrats were much more happy with that second hour, where they believe on health care, on gun rights, on abortion rights, on democracy, and January 6th, on issues that the Democrats believe play more in their favor, that Governor Walz got his footing and was a much better debater and drawing much sharper contrast. The question, Jake, is, number one, does it matter at all? They're the vice presidential candidates. In the past, it hasn't mattered much. We'll see, because this campaign is very different. But at the beginning, the two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy. Harris has a big deficit on immigration. And Republicans were happy tonight, and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
Yeah, honestly, that's the truth. I think that's pretty accurate, which is, yes, Walz did do a lot better in the second half of the debate, but you got to also set the expectations there. Because really, Walz in the beginning of the debate was a complete train wreck, at least compared to Vance. And okay, he started to be semi-competent, fair enough. But what was talked about early in that debate that was very important? Economy, right? Immigration was a big one. I thought that was some Walz absolutely dropped the ball on. Even abortion took place a little bit earlier in the segment of the debate. And that's really something that Walz dropped the ball on. Whereas the point the Democrats are celebrating is, oh, he did a really good job talking about January 6th and the democracy and all this. It's like, okay, is that an issue that you really think undecided, independent, moderate voters necessarily care a whole lot about? I don't think that is true. I don't think that is true, honestly. I think that economy is important, immigration is important, especially even maybe for female undecideds in the Democrats' favor. Abortion might be important. Maybe even climate change to Gen Z is sort of important, although I would argue that's mostly a more Democrat-leaning issue. But the democracy, January 6th insurrection of all that stuff, I mean, that's just bait for the Democrat base, realistically. I don't think that is an issue that the undecideds are really, I have certain Republican views, I have certain Democrat views, but the most important thing to me is how much does each candidate value our democracy and the peaceful It's just not real. I don't believe that. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, pretty shocking segment to say the least, don't we think, from CNN here, huh? All unanimously saying Tim Walz didn't do a very good job. Democrats are a little bit nervous with that performance. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I am a little surprised to hear CNN say it, but hey, maybe they're a little personally pissed off because Tim Walz would not take any one-on-one interviews with them. Dana Bash kind of admitted that, hey, give me the interview. And that's kind of what happens when you piss off the mainstream media, which is obviously a very core support base for the Democrat Party. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to help support our channel. Go do it. Go subscribe. I'm watching you. Okay, until next time, God bless. Check out Ground News and peace.